Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. My name is Rick Coos. I'm running for Kitsap County Sheriff, but this isn't about politics. I wanted to bring awareness to a very important topic about human trafficking. So I invited Jim Fuda and Myrle Carner to come here and discuss human trafficking from Crime Stoppers and what they have seen. And I was fortunately able to see their presentation, I think about a month ago. Month or two ago, and it really convicted me on seeing some things that I didn't know, and I want to make sure other people are aware of that because it's a very important topic. So about Jim's background includes a 33-year law enforcement career with more than 15 years as Special Operations Commander. In his tenure, his talents were utilized as a hostage negotiations team commander, major event security planner liaison, dignitary protection coordinator, Marine unit commander, and physical security specialist. In this time, he was also responsible for policy and procedure development for Y2K, critical incident response operations, Marine unit operations, and courthouse security operations. Operationally, Jim responded to more than 300 hostage barricade situations from 1982 to 2006 and is responsible for saving numerous lives. Jim's skill and experience were utilized as key security organizer liaison for the 1990 Goodwill Games, 96 Asian Pacific Economic Conference, and the 1999 World Trade Organization Conference. Because of his expertise, he was a key participant as a consultant to Dartmouth University in preparing bioterrorism, virtual reality terrorist training for police, fire, and EMS personnel geared to the first responder. Internationally, Jim has worked as a police and military consultant trainer for the U.S. Department of Justice in Indonesia, Pakistan, and Bosnia. He was formidable in tailoring democratic policing training materials to the political environment in the assigned country. Because of his work in this arena, he was hired as a senior executive advisor to the Minister of the Interior, Republic of Srpska, there you go, to help foster a positive working environment in post-war Bosnia. Jim also teaches active shooter response, critical incident management, and anti-terrorism operations for the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and is recognized for developing current curriculum geared towards first responders as well as commanders. Jim has also experienced in the corporate sector as the Global Event Security Director for Microsoft, where he was responsible for securing all Microsoft events worldwide, having direct reports in Seattle, London, and Singapore. Jim is now the Executive Director for Crime Stoppers of Puget Sound and has positive results in building trusting relationships between the public, the police, and the media to create a safer community environment by sharing information, providing training, and apprehending criminals. Currently, Jim is working on the Transnational Initiative, which is a 4-country cooperative alliance to combat human trafficking, terrorism, illicit trade narcotics trafficking, illegal arms dealing, cybercrime, and corruption. This project involves trusted partners from Bosnia, Serbia, Croatia, and Slovenia, where Crime Stoppers have introduced the anonymous APP concept, which will allow citizens to report crime anonymously without fear of retribution. To that end, Jim was instrumental in forming Crime Stoppers Global Solutions, an NGO that is now responsible for the Transnational Crime Initiative. Jim has written many articles in the police security arena, to include Trigger Point, The Moment of Truth, and Nubia America, Are We Better Prepared? And most recently, Police Collaboration, Low Frequency, High Cost Services, to name just a few. In a nutshell, Jim is a dynamic leader who has a proven track record in law enforcement, training, and security arenas. He has a unique capacity for building positive relationships and creating a win-win environment to meet the needs and requirements of all parties involved.
Did you write this?
Hours writing this. Yes, and I have yours right here too. Where'd you go?
Thank you for your service. Yeah.
I feel bad now. Somewhere is yours. And we have Myrle. The magnificent man of all time, who is superior in helping and developing programs, is featured on Washington's Most Wanted and helped narrate various crime approaches. He himself is here today in your presence. Let's give a warm welcome to Jim and Myrle.
So, the reason we're here today, Myrle started the program of Crime Stoppers in 1988 here in Seattle. So I want to start off today talking about February of 2020. I'm in Belgrade, Serbia, meeting with a group called ASPR. They are anti-human trafficking group that rescues children. I met with them late afternoon in an obscure building, because they have to be careful in these countries, because if the traffickers know where they are at times, that they're in harm's way. So it's in the strip building, 7th floor walk up, and I'm meeting with these people, and this woman tells us of a story of 2 Syrian Christian girls that were sold at age 14 just because they were Christian, brought through the Balkan route into Western Europe, violated multiple times a day for 2 years. 10 days prior to me meeting with them, they got word that these girls were in Bosnia, but and knew that they were coming into Serbia. So they decided to wait those 10 days, because crossing the border with girls, the borders are corrupt, and they don't know if they take the girls away from them and give them back to the traffickers, or if it would cost a bunch of money to get them across, whatever the reason might be. So this particular morning, they had rescued those 2 Syrian Christian girls. The woman telling the story starts to tear up. And I said, but that's a good thing, right? And she said, there was a 3rd girl. The 3rd girl was broken off to them in Bosnia, sent to Kosovo, strapped to a table where they harvested her organs, the highest bidder on the black market. They basically killed her and took her organs. These are the kind of crimes and things that we're going to be talking about today, along with how to keep your children safe here, internet crimes against children as well. Myrle?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the crime stopper concept. Jim and I've spent my entire career in Seattle Police, so I'll try to know how to do it. I had a passion. I was working in what's called CID, Criminal Investigation Unit, and I was a homicide robbery detective, and the chief came to me and said, I looked at your resume, you're kind of an innovative guy, I want you to do something different for the Seattle market. We really need to get more information on crime. So anyway, I searched around the country, and I mostly talked to my golf buddies who were homicide detectives. And I said, so what are you doing in your city? And they go, well, we have this thing called Crime Stoppers. And I said, oh, I know that. That's the guy in the dog suit, right? McGruff in that Crime Stoppers? And I said, I'm not going to wear that dog suit. I'm telling you right now, I'm not wearing it. He goes, no, stupid. He goes, that's an anonymous tip organization. And he said, we're having a conference. So I went to this conference, and it was in Montana, and I thought, well, there'll be 15 or 20 cops there, and it'll be a good trip anyway. Yeah. So I get there, and there weren't 15 or 20, there were 1,500 cops from all over the world, and they were talking about this anonymous tip information stuff, and I go, wow. And I was one of they didn't have any major cities. This fall of 1987, and they had no major cities really involved. And so when they heard I was from Seattle PD, they said, wow, we would love to start something in Seattle. So I really paid attention for a change, and I wrote down good notes. Came back after a week and talked to the chief, and we started a program called Crime Stopper. Now, Jim was still active with the King County Sheriff's Office. We worked many cases together. And so at that time, I was pretty highly involved in the Green River murder case. And for those that have any background, we had 125 full-time cops, detectives, working on the case. And at that time, for us, we had spent $33 million of the taxpayer money on this case. We had investigated, and I said, wow, we're going to get a new sheriff coming from Boise, Idaho, a guy named Jim Montgomery. And I think I'll talk to him when he lands, because this would be perfect time to do something in a cooperative venture. So Jim Montgomery came to Seattle, I met with him, and I said, look, we've worked on Green River a long time, and I said, what if we took this concept of Crime Stoppers and applied it to Green River? And he said, wow, I love Crime Stoppers in Boise, where he was the chief. He said, yeah, I want to be behind it. So long story short, I was way out of my comfort zone when I started this thing, but we did a national movie called Manhunt Live back in I got together and we decided to incorporate January the 4th of '88. We started the first crime shop program in the city of Seattle. We did the movie called Man Not Live in December of 1988, and we had every major broadcasting company carried it, and we had an anonymous tip line that was handled by all our Green River guys, Jim's team from the county, and all these buddies, my golf buddies that came in because they wanted to play free golf. But anyway, we did this movie, and we had no idea the response we were going to get. But we had over 117,000 people call us on a 2-hour broadcast. Needless to say, we couldn't handle the love, but we did the best. Now think about it, no cell phones, okay? They're using hardwire line, and computers are the size of this hall, and so everything we did was handwritten. But it told us, and told me and Jim, that if we would start something like Crime Stoppers, I think the citizens will get behind us. So Jimmy, I go this way?
No.
Other way?
The arrow on the
I got you, okay. Well, there's Dr. Fuda right there. He really is, he's a very modest guy, and I'll tell you what he read, what Rick read, is really true. And I'm very happy that he joined our organization quite a few years when I was into it. So you've heard all about him. I have 40 plus years with Seattle PD. And yes, David Rose and I started Watson's Most Wanted back in 2008. And it was very successful. We took a little over 1,300 fugitives off the street during that time and solved over 13,000 felony cases with tips, anonymous tips. So what is it? Let's just do it in a nutshell because we have a lot to tell you today. It's the combination of the cops, the media, and the public acting in concert to help solve crime. And when you look at it now, we're all over the United States and we're in 36 countries around the world. It's the most successful crime-solving tool in the world. And so everybody tries to emulate what we do, but we've taken it almost to a science now. And what you're going to hear about today in a few minutes, it will really kind of blow your mind. So we pay for information up to $1,000. And because of that, in the city of Seattle, we knocked it dead. And county was involved. We have numbers of agencies involved, and Kitsap County is certainly part of that. So we look forward to working with the sheriff about, expanding in this area. And I have kids that live over here in Silverdale, and I love this area. So, P3 tips. Jim, you want to jump into that?
Yeah. We started using an anonymous tip app in November of 2017, and our tips automatically quadrupled, and our arrests more than doubled. Why we're in the gaming generation? I joke, I think if my granddaughter would talk to me, my 16-year-old granddaughter would talk to me, but she texted me back in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So the communication stuff has changed. And so I knew this would be an extremely valuable tool, having worked overseas and where corruption rules the land here. Anyway, I'm going to get into that in a minute. And then here's our 30-second PSA that we have out here in our area.
Every second of every minute, of every hour, of every day, there is crime happening. Some are under arrest, but most never make headlines. At Crime Stoppers, we take all of these cases seriously, and we want to hear about it. Download the free P3 mobile tips app from crimestoppers.com and share your tip anonymously. If you see something, say something. Your tip could be awarded to $1,000 in cash.
Okay. That tip app, we pay $1,000 for bank robberies and homicides. There's a scale for other types of crime of how we pay them. But what else I wanted to mention is our service coverage for our local program is King, Kitsap, Snow, and Island counties, about 4.2 million people. And we have a board of directors. Myrle retired as a paid employee, is on the board, and so we have one other regional manager, and she does all this I dotting and T crossing that I'm not capable of, and then I do the other stuff with the police. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit now about cybercrime, and how many of you guys get a phone call from an FBI agent saying you have a warrant and it has a suspicious Pakistani accent, and it's Agent Smith. Yeah. Obviously, they're trying to pull your information. Oh, and I want to be paid off with a gift card. Yeah. Obviously, fraud stuff. You get a lot of that stuff on your emails that come in too. In fact, about 3 times a day, I get. It goes into my spam now. Someone's tried to log into your Facebook account, and it's a fake. They want you to put in your information, change your password, and then they own your site. These kinds of things. So what is cybercrime? Criminal activity, basically using data and the internet or your phones. Major categories of crimes against people, property, and government. And crimes against people include cyber harassment and stalking. A big one, and we talk about that maybe another time. We can bring the stalking and situational awareness stuff out. Distribution of child pornography, credit card fraud, trafficking, spoofing, meaning trying to get your information. So ICAC is a nonprofit Internet Crimes Against Children unit that's global. Every major city in the United States has one. Ours is run out of the Seattle Police Department by Sergeant Brandon James. And the issues that come up with these types of crimes is the technology is changing so fast, is that people are having trouble investigating these crimes, and the laws aren't keeping up. It's from everywhere. I had an acquaintance of mine call me 4 or 5 months ago. He and his wife, both in tears. Their 12-year-old daughter had been communicating with a 14-year-old boy in California. Not a 14-year-old boy in California. You can buy IP addresses. When I lived in Bosnia, I wanted to stream American television. I couldn't do it with a Bosnian IP address. And the techie guy said, well, here, $7 it cost me. And I was able to stream American TV. I was able to buy an IP. This guy could have been a 37-year-old Hungarian. But they lure the kids, both boys and girls. They open up, they tell them about their families, they tell them about their parents, their classmates, principals, teachers, those kinds of things. But what happened is, she's already sent in an explicit picture. And then, now, the predators got it. They get more and more and more explicit. If they don't send more explicit pictures, then they get told that they're going to share this with their family, friends, all that stuff. Teen suicides are up since the pandemic. Internet crimes against children have reported through the Missing Center for Missing and Exploited Children that is up 43% since the start of the pandemic. Why? Kids are home and the predators are always online already. And these are the kinds of things that end up going on, photos end up going on the dark web. So, cybercrime, I've already talked about that stuff. So, anyway, some of the apps that these guys use, they lure them into however they find them, whether it be TikTok or one of these apps. But these bad guys have their preferred apps that they know how to work, and they lure them over to their ones of choice. And these are some of them. So, like I said, over 40%, 43 is what I was told. Easy access for a la carte children. Law enforcement challenges, because how do you know where these people are calling from? The FBI has done something very smart. They partnered with private business, like Microsoft, people like that, and they are bringing in trusted law enforcement from all over the world for a 3-month course outside of Pittsburgh. So they're trying to keep up with the change in technology using I guess for lack of a better word, these technical advisor scientist people that work with the internet daily to educate these people to try to find out where some of this stuff is coming from.
One of the things to keep in mind, and you'll be aware of this, is that in today's budgetary process, like when I look at the city of Seattle and you hear the news, it's true. We had, when I last was active, we had 1,417 personnel in SPD. We now have 841. And when all the issues that came during the pandemic, defund the police, all these other things, we had to become very resourceful with technology, the ones that were left. And so, fortunately, Crime Stoppers remained in the loop, and we were able to continue our program. And so what we're talking about today, using these technology things, is critical to the future of law enforcement, because we just don't have the manpower to handle what takes place.
Okay, so who do they target? Teens, both boys and girls, and 12 to 19, some as young as 8, but a lot of them start at that 10, 11, 12 mark, because how many 8-year-olds are using some of those social apps? A lot of them are. Teens from all backgrounds, traffickers seek out children that appear vulnerable, depressed, whatever it might be, and befriend them. And runaway and homeless youth are at huge risk for these people. So the process is scouting, manipulating, and trapping. Looking for them, trapping them by becoming their friend, or manipulating them, and then trapping them for, like say, for photographs and things like that. Or to meet them, the ICAC unit does a lot of stings, where a guy thinks he's talking to a 14-year-old girl. They go meet at a motel, and then the SWAT team land-based, takes her into custody. And they're also showered with love and romance and promises of a better life. Those kinds of things, expensive gifts, and they're lured in. And a lot of these girls now, or teens, are being lured in by women. You look at the Jeffrey Epstein case with whatever her name is, but lured in by women because there's more of a trust, a mother kind of instinct with them. So enticements, pretends to be a kid, like I mentioned on social media, to exchange numbers and meet on whatever app of the predator's choice. Trust relationships built, sexual images are exchanged, and then it spirals like we talked about.
Those that get arrested on these stings with ICAC,
ICAC, Internet Crime Commission.
Are you able to work with them to find out other people, or do they give others up?
Many of those people are because they know they're perverts. They don't work in teams. They don't know each other. And they work privately. I want to tell you how sophisticated some of these units are. Dogs have now been trained when they go do a search warrant on a house to find child pornography and things like that, is that dog is trained to sniff out computers, hard drives, things like that, computer equipment, which is unbelievable. So it's gotten more sophisticated that way as well. But I found this pre-pandemic, from Purdue, 1 out of 25 children will experience a sexual solicitation online, and where the person will directly ask for sex in the course of being an adolescent, which I thought was shocking.
A little bit about ICAC that you need to understand. These are the best of the best. There's a lot of cops around the world that are experts in the technology of the computer world, so to speak. So based out of FBI headquarters and ICAC, they're the best. So there's a word of encouragement to you coming today that these guys and gals that work these cases are the best of the best. And they deal with the online things like you cannot even believe. But thank God these guys and gals do a job 24/7, 365, and they're very good at what they do. So there's hope in tracking down these predators because of their expertise.
And they're overwhelmed. In fact, I actually attended a class in Sarajevo just on this a few years back by our FBI. And they showed a picture of kind of a half-clad girl, and I said, I didn't get this. Don't look at the girl, look behind. It's written in Cyrillic. That means they're in a Balkan or Baltic country. So to get you an idea of where some of this stuff is coming from, and they can zero it right into where some of this stuff is taking place. And even down to some of the brothels where some of these girls are being held against their will. And how some of that works is that, let's say I am a poor farmer in Thailand. I got 3 daughters. Trafficker comes to them. These are uneducated people. Trafficker says, look, I want to bring your daughters to Bangkok. I'm going to educate them, give them jobs, and we're going to send you money. Girls automatically go straight to the brothel. They do pay them, but the girls are threatened. Their IDs are held, and they're threatened that if you leave here, we're killing your family. Or the other side of that coin is quality of life and how human value is in some areas. I'm a poor farmer. I have 3 daughters. Sorry, honey, you have to go with them. We all have to eat. So that was the one that ends up being sacrificed. I was working in Surabaya, Indonesia, and the training center I was at was about 30 kilometers away from our hotel. And it was in a rural area, and it was a dirt bridge. And one day I watched a van. It was a VW bus, but it was a flatbed. And I watched 2 guys jump out right in the middle of the bridge, pick up a guy in the back, no arms, no legs, sat against a post with a bucket. And I asked the interpreter, I said, what is up with that? And she said, everybody has to pay their way. So this guy sat there from dawn till dusk till they decided it was time to come pick him up, and people would throw coins in there, and that's how he supported he helped to provide for the family. Horrible to watch. Anyway, so how do you keep your child safe online? Check their devices. You're their parents. Look at what they're going through. Search their history, who they're talking with, emails, texts. Talk to your kids about predators. There's a group out there now that one of the Rotary clubs is sponsoring called the Lantern Project. And they're a group of a lot of these are survivor women that actually go to high schools and relate to the kids. Say, hey, I was you, and this is what happened to me. Pay attention to this. So they're educating kids on this now. And make sure their social media accounts are turned to private, and location tracking is turned off, so they can't locate the areas where they might be. Okay, any questions on that part? I want to go into the overall view of human trafficking and where we're at. Yeah.
I have a question. I have a 13-year-old daughter, and so with these interactions with people online, a lot of the time kids are doing a lot of video chatting right now.
Yeah.
So you see, I mean, she, talks with her friends on video a lot, but how are these predators? I mean, is it mainly just through messaging? I mean,
And messages and photos. They take a photo and say, "This is who I am." Let's say if it's a guy trying to attract a younger girl, they show a cute picture of an Ed Sheeran or something, I don't know, and send it to them so they establish their relationships and build the trust that way.
Another thing is video games, and nowadays with like Xbox and stuff, where you can, she has friends that she talks to on the video game, and so when you were talking about those things, my thought process went to, okay, when she's playing on her Xbox.
Yeah, well, but the good news is that if they're showing their face, they're probably okay. You're talking to, you say, hey, that's a kid, I know.
Kid,
So, yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
I think the main responsibility for parents and teachers, we're afraid to take on our teachers sometimes. They're educating their children, and as a seasoned cop, you have the right to know what's going on in your school. You need to talk to your principal. You need to get out there and get yourself educated. Yes.
Do you ever talk to the schools? Because I'm telling you right now, I go to Central Kitsap school board meetings, and I hate to say this, but there's like a lot of grooming going on in these schools. And if you guys could go and talk to to the board, do a presentation to the school board and share your information, because I don't think they have a clue when it comes to this kind of stuff. They get their marching orders from other people, and they think that that's what they're supposed to do. But as far as this stuff here, I think it would be very valuable if you could do that.
Well, Jim can have his own views, but my view is yes, we're invited. And I know it, you know, how it happens with the school board. You've all been to meetings and things. You just got to insist that you need to know what's going on. And if we can help, we're happy to help. But we have to have an invitation, and we have to go through the process. We don't have any problem doing it, and we'd love to do it. But I really think parents need to know what's going on in the school system. It's appalling, but I don't.
I've actually thought, because it's so overwhelming, Myrle and I have done one video together of situational awareness and active shooter stuff. And my idea now is to do one on things like this and put it in a video and put it out there, you know, on YouTube, send it to the schools, that kind of thing. So that's our next project that we're talking about moving this forward here soon. I'm back in Serbia here at the end of the month for what we're going to talk about next. And so I'm going to try to formulate some stuff and get this moving.
Thank you.
So anyway, on this, how this, using technology to combat cross-border crime, how this came about, as I mentioned, November 2017, we started using the TIPS app here, and it exploded. You know, our TIPS quadrupled. So I got to thinking, having worked in an area where corruption leads things, people are afraid to talk, is that what better tool could we use? So I randomly picked 7 crimes: human trafficking, terrorism, illicit trade, arms dealing, drug smuggling, cybercrime, and bank fraud. Myrle and I go back, and we have trusted policemen. I brought, and I had them bring 4 countries together. 2 outside the EU, Serbia and Croatia, Serbia and Bosnia. 2 inside Croatia and Slovenia. Myrle and I went back, did 1 presentation and 1 press release, and we had 47 tips in a week. People want to talk, they're just afraid to. So, plus the monetary incentive of $1,000 US for the rest of the charge, where $1,000 there pays a year's rent, it's going to be a success. To where we actually had, when we did that in Boston, we learned 2 things. One, a local program, we went back as Stoppers of Puget Sound, then we knew that could not sustain an international program. And 2 is that Bosnia was not the place to start. They called them governments, not governments. Bosnia are Muslim, Croats are Catholic, and the Serbs are Orthodox. If one likes it, the other 2 don't. So we moved it to Serbia. And it took us 2 years to build the relationships to where we were ready to open their program. End of February 2019, after I just got back, I brought 3 Serbs here. And 2 weeks later, COVID hit. So everything shut down. So that's where we're going back to reestablish a certified program. We have office space now, hiring somebody, and we've got to do a public service announcement for our further TVs. The good news is, when America comes there, that they like to talk to you on the TV, so that's good. So I can get a lot of things generated there the first week of November. Anyway, that's how that stuff started. From that, we moved into the crimes that have no borders, that are all corruption-based. Like I think I just mentioned that. So anyway, taking the fight to the source or the transit routes before it hits the Western world. Stopping it and getting those high-profile traffickers into custody before they do what they do. And trusted law enforcement is extremely important to get these guys vetted, because if those tips get in the wrong hands, it can be very, very counterproductive.
If Jim had not been working for the Department of Justice at the time that we went back there and built that relationship, we'd be at ground zero today.
That's the only reason we started there, is that's the way I trust the cops.
And the best between Joe and I, we've got 1,000 years in law enforcement. But the reality is, when we go to a foreign country, we start over. We have to be trusted. And so, because of Joe's relationship with the Department of Justice and the people, we were light years ahead of everybody else. And when we started to introduce this concept, it was immediately accepted, but they still didn't trust us.
So for example, we came back and formed Carner Stoppers Global Solutions. We brought some think tank people from around the globe. We got an MI6 guy out of London, Scott Soderbergh, who's Dave Reicher's former chief of staff, on the political side of things. We got a lobbyist in DC that's helping us with government funds, but they want results first, so we're doing the nonprofit thing and looking even for some donations to get that first arrest. And then they said you'll have an open check. So I was just back in DC in July, and those were the comments from the people that we met with. So, like I said, an app that bypasses corruption and citizens do not fear retribution because they're totally anonymous. Once they submit a tip, they can put all the information in there. You'll see the platform here coming up, is that any information they know about a bad guy, they can also add video, audio, or photos to it. Once they hit send, all we know them by is a numerical identifier. And we can actually communicate back and forth with the tipster, not knowing who they are or where they are. And we can also let that detective that's investigating that particular tip can communicate back and forth. So it's just a no-brainer. It's a technical tool and I'm not a tech guy, but I can easily do it. To download, it's very simple.
The reality is, like Crime Stoppers works globally because it is totally anonymous. And people don't believe that, but it's really true. We worked for 3 years in technology to make sure that the technology was anonymous. So when you call a 24-hour hotline, 1-800-222-TIPS, or you use the tip line, you're talking to an experienced person, and all of that information is totally anonymous. The only thing we do is assign a number to you so that if the information that comes in leads to an arrest and charge, then we have a system on how to pay you. And like Jim said, all tips are weighed on the value of that tip, with the exception of 2 crimes, homicides and bank robberies, which automatically pays $1,000. Everything else is weighted on a scale. That's what the information is for.
Except there, because the importance of these types of crimes we're going after, they're not $1,000, they're $999, because $1,000 is reportable, and that means we have to tell who we're giving that money to. So anyway, coming back to how the focus would be, I mentioned this to a couple of you before. The thing is, if you start down here in South Asia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, come through the Middle East, through Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, and then through Turkey. That's where a lot of this stuff starts, with a lot of the drugs and those kinds of things, and the human trafficking for a lot that moves into. But once it crosses this border here, Croatia went into the European Union too soon. The border is still corrupt between Croatia, Serbia, and Bosnia. And once they cross that border into Croatia, they're free to roam all of Western Europe. In fact, the Wahhabi group that Bin Laden belonged to, they were based in a little town about right there for forever. But because they could cross that border, they're now based in Vienna, Austria. They're in Western Europe now. So and you could identify a Wahhabi from a mile away. Short hair, long beard, and high water pants. They got some uniform that's they all wear it. So, but anyway, also the gun running is huge because of the war there, the arms that are hidden, the Russian Kalashnikovs and these kinds of things. I actually have video of a plane leaving the Belgrade airport that's supposed to go to Saudi to help fight with our allies. The plane diverts and goes to Syria to fight against our allies. And those small caches of guns ended up going back through the Balkan route. Who remembers the Charlie Hebdo incident in Paris where the cartoon people, they made some, and they killed all those people? And that concert in Paris, that like 100 people were killed. Those guns came off that plane. So they're recycling even. So it's like I mentioned, these are already organized crime. Those are the crimes we're going after, and this is the first time this concept is being used in this part of the world, and a multi-nation thing as well.
When you look at these organized crime and the titles of the 7 that we're mainly working on, you got to remember that in the crime world that we invest in, everything's based on crimes against property or crimes against the person. That's how they're weighed out. And when you look at, like, for example, in our state, the RCW, revised code of Washington, you can go in there and see the penalties affixed to different types of crime. So we investigate, when I worked in homicide robbery, that was all crimes against the person. The difference is, like, for example, a lot of people that you hear from say, well, my house got robbed. Well, actually, it didn't get robbed. It actually got burglarized unless a person was in the residence where there was a confrontation. Now it changes from a crime against property to a crime against the person.
And you think, well, why bank fraud? You follow the money.
Yeah.
That's where the corruption part comes in. Okay, so why is this different than some of these others? A lot of the ones in the United States are for education, awareness, and prevention, which we definitely need. But we take the global approach of stopping the corruption base before it spreads globally. That's our goal. And operationally gives trust in law enforcement. And I have to emphasize trusted, because if that tip gets into the wrong hands, like I said, very counterproductive. And the two of them go after the traffickers. And oftentimes, an investigator will have 80% of the crime done, or the investigation done. This tip gives them that 20%, but they can actually go out and make an arrest. So how does it work? Well, just like our program here, only on a global level, and our lists of crimes are with those 7 targeted ones. Monitoring incentives the same, and I mentioned trusted law enforcement again.
In the U.S., we use a tip system for like crime shoppers, around the areas that we manage, but we had to break it down so it would be a little easier to track. That's why we have the 7 various crimes that we're doing outside the United States.
And not to sound callous, but I don't care if they have a bank robbery in Belgrade, or it's that they have local police to handle that. This is stuff that affects us all. That's borderless crimes. So here's how the app looks. We have an in language. You see this TCI circle. We're going to take the TC off of that. That stands for Transnational Crime Initiative. We just want it least obtrusive. We don't want people to see that, bad guys see that on someone's phone and go, oh, okay, you're a snitch. So anonymous user app and the user ID is the means for CSGS and tipster to ensure that they can communicate safely. But here's how it looks, and you see where it says English here, Gauge, that's change the language, and they can change it. You see this is in Serbian.
But the technology can be changed to any country. And it's done automatically. So that's huge. So no matter where you're at in these other nations and you're investigating, it comes to them in their own language, which took a long time to develop. But it's very, very, very useful.
I got a 3-minute video I want to show you that kind of explains the whole process. This is what we put together as a kind of a promotional thing that I'll just show you. It's 3 minutes.
Every minute of every day, 2 children are being prepared for sexual exploitation. The average age of these children is 14, but many are as young as 3. Child sexual exploitation is a $14 to $16 billion a year business. The top 3 countries involved in these horrific acts are India, Brazil, and sadly the United States. I recently heard of a case where two 16-year-old girls were rescued after being in captivity since they were both 14 and had been raped multiple times a day until they were rescued just last month. As if this wasn't horrific enough, there was a third girl that was not so fortunate. She was taken by her captors, transported to an Eastern European country where her organs were harvested for resale to the highest rate on the black market. This occurs on a regular basis and is simply cold-blooded, premeditated murder and needs to be stopped. Crime Stoppers Global Solutions has developed state-of-the-art app technology where citizens can report crimes anywhere in the world, anonymously, without fear of retribution for criminals. Once an anonymous citizen has submitted a tip utilizing a secure app, that information will immediately be sent to trusted law enforcement detectives for investigation. This simple process gives a voice to citizens, allows them to submit valuable criminal information, and enables all of us to do our part to stop child sex trafficking. Here's how your tax-deductible donation helps in this vital cause. Supports the necessary technology that aids in gathering crucial intelligence on traffickers anywhere in the world. Supports local Crime Stopper Global Solutions programs in developing countries. Creates a reward fund to pay tipsters for key information that leads to an arrest and charges of child sex traffickers. Please give your tax-deductible donation today. You can give a one-time donation or register to give on a monthly basis. You can give $100, $50, $25, or even $5 a month. Every dime of what you pledge will go directly towards saving a child from a life of physical and sexual abuse and possibly murder. Together, we can help stop these types of violent crimes against innocent children. Together, we can make a difference. Remember, every minute of every day, 2 children are being prepared for sexual exploitation. You know what you would do if this was your child. Please, please help us to do the same for those children who have no voice. For more information, go to www.thescsgs.org. Once again, www.thescsgs.org. I'm Jim Fuda, founder and vice chairman of Crime Stoppers Global Solutions. Thank you.
It says two websites, but both of those go to that one, right?
You know, here's a critical thing for citizens and what the sheriff's going to need to know when he works with the people, is that you're guaranteed that if you send a tip anonymously, you will never be contacted. Your information is safe. Everything that, like Jim and I being investigators, there's a lot of cases that I could have solved if I had just had 3 or 4 more things. And so those are inactive cases. And now they go to what the nation knows as cold cases. Seattle, my buddy that worked down there has 284 cold cases, murder cases that he's currently working on by himself because information has not come forward to put the final thing together so that we can actually prosecute someone. No one is ever going to get paid in this system unless it leads to an arrest and charge. You notice that oftentimes some people say, well, it's got to be prosecution. Well, I'm going to tell you what, in today's system in the courts, it can take years before a case actually gets sentenced or somebody goes to trial. So we want to get that information out to the informant so that we can continue to get the information. That is a critical part of why we do Crime Stoppers.
Yes, how do you guys get pedicures? How many goes to like a Southeast Asian place? Have you noticed every 3-4 months you go in there's a different girl working on your feet? Okay, you're lucky. A lot of them, there's a cycle that they rotate them through. Same alert. We talk in the local language. The girl never really talks to you. The owner talks to you back and forth. If you're in one of those situations and you notice that, you're witnessing human trafficking. Someone's holding on to that person's passport and has control over it. So it's one of those crimes I said that's hidden in plain sight.
I did go to one and it it's just like icky cameras all over. They didn't talk to me, but the owner was, now that you say that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was just an icky feeling. I never went back. And I wondered who the
I bet if you go back, there'll be someone else different on the feed.
Yeah.
Could I build on that? Women have the best gut feels in the world. And as a seasoned cop, I waited a long time to remember that. But the fact remains, most of the cases I saw were on gut feels from witnesses that actually knew more and wanted to actually talk. So, women, woo, great job.
And you'll also notice, where port cities are. Our coast, we get a lot of the Southeast Asian come into this side because we're ports. The East Coast is a lot of Ukraine, of Baltic, Balkan, Russian coming in. And the South, of course, Mexico, Central South America. It ends up mixing, but that's where you'll see the majority when they come in and stay a lot in those more geographical areas, because that's where they land. My family, I'm first generation Italian here, and my family, I have a lot still in New York, Toronto, that area, and the older ones only came to Seattle because for work. So anyway, trafficking to youth refers to all acts related to recruitment, transportation, sale, or purchase of individuals through force, fraud, or other coercion means for the purpose of exploitation. In other words, making money. Trafficking is the second fastest and fastest growing and second largest next to drug smuggling. And government corruption is the key factor. That's why going to the source or the transit routes is, I truly believe, is the answer. So statistics, there are an average of 45 million people being trafficked worldwide. That comes from the UNODC, UN Office of Drugs and Crime. The average lifespan, this is what gets me, is 7 to 10 years. Now imagine you're a 16-year-old Filipino kid working on a boat 18, 20 hours a day. Can't get off that boat for 2 years because they bring supplies out to them. They're not off that boat. How long is that poor kid's life expectancy? All ethnicities are at risk, and the average age of domestic sex trafficking is 13, which is just sickening. So here's how this kind of breaks down. Asia is the largest wide population. That's the only reason. But when you say 45 million people are being born into slavery now too. The ones that work in the fields and things like that. And we're rescuing some, but more are going in than not. And this was one of the UNODC stats as well, if you break it down just by the numbers. Which is they're dying in that as well. Some are being rescued, not very many. So who's trafficked? Women and girls comprise about 80%. About 70% of those are for commercial sexual exploitation. Forms: street work, brothels, mail order brides, dancers, pornography, massage parlors.
Let me talk a little here. Jim and I have been making presentations to major organizations such as the American Trucking Association, the American Hotel Association. All of these individuals are actively involved in trying to stop this in their own industry. You go to any major truck stop on any interstate across the United States, and that's where sex trafficking takes place. A lot of these, you hear about these cases where, for example, they'll open a container that's being shipped into a port, and there are 20 or 30 people dead in there, and they've been smuggled in and promised a new world, a new life, and all that. That's what all of these guys, they get these women involved. It's all about a new life and so forth. But I'm telling you that it's critical that if you sense something, you need to tell people. A lot of people know what's going on in their community. They just don't take the time.
And if you don't feel it's worthwhile to call the police, send us a tip. We'll get it to the right person. Maybe a detective that we can filter those tips down to the appropriate detective, and maybe he's got some information that none of us know about. and that helps.
Well, I have a question. Will you have a list of your resources and documentation at the end of this presentation in a slide?
I mean,
Well, you're giving us lots of numbers and statistics and everything else. I'd like to know where they're coming from.
I just told UNODC is a lot of it. Missing, the Center for Missing and Exploited Children is one back in DC, and then the UNODC, the Office of Drugs and Crime. That's where I pulled, I got most of my information, and from actually attending some of these presentations by those groups.
And UNODC is what?
United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime.
One thing you need to realize, ma'am, is that the statistics you're doing today is changing. You know, it's just changing daily. But the fact remains that it's not going down, it's going up. And that's why we're very concerned about making public presentations. And that's why a potential sheriff is concerned about his own county. Because together we can make the difference. You've heard that. But it really is true. If we don't get the cooperation, law enforcement is its lowest ebb ever, trust me, as far as manpower and so forth. We absolutely have to have the help of the communities that we serve. And that's why we're very interested in doing these types of things.
Have you guys met like with the ports, like the Port of Tacoma? Because where I live, I see all these container boats going back and forth, right? And here you see them. And they sit out there in Manchester for days and weeks on end sometimes.
Yeah, TSA is doing a lot of that.
Are they? Okay.
To answer your question, yes. TSA and a number of federal agencies that monitor these, and they're very good. U.S. Coast Guard, for example, have been recently really training people to look for the sources when it comes to shipments and those kinds of things. And so it's getting better, but it's just another manpower and expense. You know,
and they even do other things. Like I just got back from Italy on celebrating my 70th birthday on Monday, and my luggage didn't make it home with me. And so I get this call, oh, it's in customs now. So they go through your luggage. If you're not with that luggage, you know, they go through. And so they're checking to see if there are drugs, whatever might be coming in with it. So those are the more of the, like Myrle said, the federal people doing that.
Okay.
Happy birthday. And not to be negative, but if corruption is that awful in those countries, and you are able to get people arrested, what is to prevent them from being released in that corrupt system to go back out and do it again? Or how far have we been able to take that?
Yeah, our government, through a group called OPDAT, OPDAT, and I don't know what that acronym stands for, but it's our government that is actually bringing our federal judges to work with the court systems in some of these countries. And they're starting to vet some of these people as well. So it's more of a political politician side of things there.
It's very difficult, in my experience, in traveling abroad, dealing in these arenas because you're really dealing in politics at the highest level, trust me. And so, but you've got to be, it's like I appreciate your questions on where do you get your information, all these kinds of things. You need to know that, and you need to know your sources, so that you can speak intelligently when you talk to your kids, or your schools, or your community. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, do you have any U.S. data from this? Because I've read U.S. data that doesn't actually support some of your numbers.
Some of it is comes from, like I said, I told you from my sources for it. That's why I got them. And like I said, they change every time. And let me tell you an example of that is I read in the paper the other day that somebody seized, some agency seized $402,000 worth of fentanyl. Where does that? Well, that's so subjective. Is that street value? Is it what it will cost to make it? So somebody obviously made that number up, and a lot of that happens. So these have to be estimates. I mean, UNODC isn't going out counting, okay, 45,672 slaves. This one, they're not good. They go by a lot of his estimates.
One of the, not to say anything against that, but I'll just tell you, locally in Seattle, one of our narcotic guys, our narcotic unit, did a 2-year investigation. We actually physically counted 710,000 fentanyl tablets that were taken off the streets in a motel in North Cape. It isn't like some crazy area. And so I'm just telling you, a lot of the stuff, the statistics are right to the science. When it comes to prosecution of somebody that goes to trial, be very specific. Some of the homicide cases, like I'll give you an example on Green River. We had 100,000 pages of follow-up information that's still kept to this day in what we call, what's the top floor courthouse there? There's a name for it, but I'm trying to think. Anyway, a lot of the bones and things that we're still investigating related to Green River are still there. There's only one guy, Tom,
Jensen.
Yeah, Tom Jensen is the only guy left out of the original Green River murder investigation team that still keeps track of a lot of these things. But when you go to trial, as you know, you have to be very specific on this information. You can't leave loopholes because these guys, they hire the best. They're making millions. They can afford to hire the best, and so we have to be very exact.
Well, and they say in the United States, these are our estimates, 500,000 to 1 million in the areas of prostitution, agriculture, construction, domestic work, and sweatshops. In fact, it was a few months back where they opened up a 3-car garage in Bellevue and found 20 people making knockoff Gucci. You know, so these kinds of things that are happening too in what you call a sweatshop. So red flags to look for. Appears to be under someone else's control. Seems to be under surveillance. In fact, if you go Aurora, let's say, I'll just use that as an example, is that you see a girl walking the street, you look within 50 to 100 yards, and you'll see someone in a car, or you'll see someone looking out of a motel room window because they're not allowed to roam too far on anybody's side. You're not there to protect the girl, they're there to protect their interests. Personal contacts are monitored. Most of these girls won't have a phone with them. Doesn't manage their own money. Not in control of their own ID or passport. Usually it can be with older people, older individual, older men or older women. Work excessive hours. Lives with a supposed employer, like we mentioned with the pedicure people. They learn no language skills and appears to have little privacy. A little bit more, and these are ones that are more, you're not going to know if they have STDs or anything, but gets more into the investigation part of things. Drug user, obviously, you see with the ones without the teeth, those are the ones that are doing the meth. Stunted growth. If a minor talks about an older man boyfriend and is stunted, like I mentioned, for bad teeth. This is one of our partners, the Exodus Road. It's a faith-based group out of Colorado Springs, and they do a lot of work in India and Southeast Asia. In fact, there you'll see one picture of a guy whose face is blurred. He's one of the investigators in India, and they'll kill him in a heartbeat. So and no other culture can go in and get into them. So they're paying some people to do this work for them. I thought it was a great video to listen to what some of the work that they're doing.
I'm Ty. I'm married with no kids.
I'm an American mother, a single mother of 2 daughters, and I'm the sole financial provider for our family.
I'm Ian. I grew up in the village, Puget. I'm Christian. I'm a 45-year-old mother of 6, and I'm financed in middle school.
I'm a life artist, a socialist, and a city dog.
I'm an 11th generation American, middle-aged single father of 2.
I'm a marketing professional. I was born in the Dominican Republic, and I now live with my family in Arizona, Boston. I'm 13 years old, and I'm a student. I'm a Buddhist, I'm single, and I'm living in Thailand. This week, I started working in a brothel, which you can even older than my child.
I'm a fisherman who was with for 11 years.
I'm Stoppers. no one should see young girls do.
I heard the story of a fisherman who worked for 20 hours a day without pay for 11 years. I knew a girl who was trafficked. I saw two young girls playing tag while they waited for clients at a brothel.
I heard a story of a fisherman who had to store the dead body of his best friend in a refrigerator.
I heard about kids my age being forced into slavery.
I have two famous school together we can.
Together we can ensure that this doesn't happen to any of our children. Together we can get it right.
Together we can make sure children can be children.
Together we can realize there is no here, there is no there. What happens anywhere affects us everywhere.
We can do something. We all have a part to play.
Let's fight together.
Together we can make a full world.
Justice is in the hands of the government.
Yeah, I think they do a great job. One thing I wanted to mention after this quote that I came up with in 2018, society needs to believe in the human spirit and it must shine even in the darkest places. Rescue and prevention matter, not for the millions, but for the one. And I truly believe this. I get upset when I listen to people that say, oh, they categorize people. I haven't worked in Pakistan, so why are you working there? I saw a bunch of terrorists. That's not true. I'm in contact with many of them still today from my 2 years there. And these people want what we want. They want to provide for their family, they want to feel protected, and they want to feel safe, and they want to live a productive life. Whatever country that I've worked in that is a developing country, I truly believe that, just like you and me, and they deserve an advantage just because they work hard. That's my thoughts. Okay. And anyway, if you feel the need, fine. If not, that's okay too. We're moving this forward.
Just a little bit of word. We don't get paid from this organization. We get paid through law enforcement and stuff. So none of the money that goes to this program goes to us at all. It goes directly to fight exactly what you heard today. And I think that's critical. And a lot of us give. I have met organizations. All we say is just consider, and we all have to make those decisions. If you become sheriff of this county, you're going to have to make a lot of decisions.
We're going to go put a headlock on it.
You're going to have to make decisions what's best for these people sitting here. That's a huge responsibility. And so we just say, this is an informational meeting. If you want to do it again, or you're having another organization, all you have to do is get a hold of the future sheriff or Jim or I.
We'll talk to anybody else that does it.
Yeah.
I have a question. When arrests are made, you wait to pay for once you're convicted. You said it's taken years for the convictions because of our court systems. Why is it taking
We don't do, we pay on arrest and charge, not conviction.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not worried so much about getting paid, but I'm just wondering, when you say it's taken years, why is it taking years for the convictions?
You have to talk to somebody a lot smarter than you.
Okay.
Because what I would tell you would not be very nice. So I'm just saying, we all have a responsibility to vote, to get out and talk about the issues, and actually take responsibility with what I can do. I live in the city of Linwood, Washington. I'm the police commissioner there, and I take responsibility for what takes place in our city. But we all have to take responsibility in your own neighborhood watches, neighborhood whatever. Just do something.
Yeah, we got our cards up there. If somebody needs to get a hold of us, please do. Any questions? Anything else? Hope I answered all your questions.
Your app is usable now. The app is, because you said something about changing the app.
Oh, not this one. So, sorry, not this one. The P3 Tips app is what you would go download here.
Yeah.
That's not
So
here.
it's available.
Yeah. Okay.
Might be good.
It's just a free download to your App Store, Android, or iPhone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you coming.
Thank you for what you're doing.